No, I don't own a hockey mask, but I think this will do just fine as we explore the curse of Camp Blood in the Friday the 13th movie Retrospective. So Friday the 13th, it is my favorite slasher film franchise, and that's for a very good reason. Jason Voorhees, badass juggernaut killer. Unlike someone like Freddy Krueger, where he's got all this personality and all this stuff where he can be put into these more jokey, cheesy films and degrade the quality of the character. As the films deteriorate, so do the character. Jason never deteriorates. I think Jason is badass, awesome in every single film, no matter what, no matter who portrayed him. He always maintained that sort of integrity about himself. Even though the film might be a little cheesy or might not deliver, he always seemed to remain intact, one way or another. And even like Michael Myers, who really got a lot of stuff muddled up and what they were trying to do with him, had no real direction. Jason just felt very pure all the way through a lot of the films. And oddly enough, the first film of the franchise, the 1980 film that started the entire 80s slasher film craze, barely featured any Jason at all, and that is Friday the 13th, directed by Sean S. Cunningham, and featuring some amazing Tom Savini makeup effects. This is some of the best effects work in the entire franchise, and there's some things that it has not been one of my favorite films of the franchise. It's a lot slower paced, takes a lot more time to build up to a point where things are getting a little more exciting, get a little more scary, and all that kind of stuff, but it's fairly good. It's fairly well directed by Cunningham. I do think that using a lot of that point of view camera stuff with the killer really kind of didn't work too well in execution, and they kind of like probably saw like the first few minutes of Halloween from John Carpenter and wanted to replicate that through the whole film, but it didn't really work as well as it could have, because we're going to get that point of view camera shot of the killer, seeing what the killer's seeing, you know where the killer is or where he's about to strike, he or she, and you don't get that sort of sense of tension and suspense and jump scare type of thing that some of the later films would execute a lot better. But the first film is very well done. I think it's very well done. It's definitely a classic that you definitely should see. You shouldn't overlook it for any reason whatsoever. You shouldn't overlook it that there's no Jason really in the film, because Betsy Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees, excellent performance. She might have done this for like a down payment on a car or whatnot, but she doesn't phone it in. She does a fantastic job in this character, tapping in right into that psychosis mania type of thing where you can tell that she could be a real sweet person, but she's just a little too off kilter to really get things working in the right way. But Betsy Palmer does a wonderful job. You can get Kevin Bacon here in one of his early performances, and Adrienne King is a great female lead for the film. She does a great job all the way through. But I think the second film, Friday the 13th Part 2, that's definitely one of my favorites of the whole franchise. I think Steve Miner, this is his directorial debut, directs it a lot better than Cunningham did the first film. I think it's a little superior in certain ways. Jason's not quite as developed in the familiar ways that we know him. He's a lot more rudimentary, and he's a little more human in this one. There's not a lot of fantastical juggernaut qualities to him, but he's a very effective killer. I think the film was directed in a very tense, very suspenseful type of way. Really harkens back to a lot earlier sort of horror movies like stuff from Mario Bava, a very key influence on the whole film. And I think the special makeup effects don't match up the Savini's in the first one, but they are still pretty good. The film did have a number of cuts as the series went on. MPAA would demand more and more cuts to the franchise and thin down the gore a lot. And so there's a few moments here that I think could have benefited from like an unrated cut, whatnot, but it's still very good. It's one of my favorite films I love. And Amy Steele, I think, does a really good job as the lead in this film as Ginny Fields. She's got a lot of good chemistry with the rest of the cast. Stu Charno's practical Joker character, I think, is a real fun, lively, charismatic individual. Adds just a little sense of levity here and there. And the Paul Holt character, I really like him. I really like what him and Ginny got going on in the film. Nice kind of, not too heavy of romantic chemistry, but it's light. It really works well. They got a nice rhythm going back and forth between them, and there's a lot of good scares. There's a lot of good stuff in this film that I think is really worthwhile. I think it's one of the most exceptional examples of a slasher film that you could find. It's really great. I love it. It's my favorite film of the classic formula, what I say. Like, of the first four films, this is my favorite. It has that nice, grounded, eerie, gritty quality to it. And Steve Miner, who directed the film, also came back for Friday the 13th Part 3, 3D, which I've never seen it in 3D. I'm not much of a 3D person, and I've never had the opportunity to see it. But I think Steve Miner didn't do quite a good job with Part 3. No, it has a lot of fans. I don't care for it too much. I think it's a little weaker. The character is a little more flat and stereotypical, and that's even saying something for a slasher film based on general consensus of what slasher films are. That it just feels a little flatter, not quite as interesting. The cast isn't quite as good. The effects are pretty good. I love Richard Brooker. Richard Brooker does an excellent job as Jason in this film. It's the debut of the hockey mask. I love how it's kind of nonchalant quality to him. That Jason feels just a lot more confident in this film than he was in the last film. Richard Brooker is one of my favorite Jasons. Just has that nice, confident, eerie quality to him. He's just slow and methodical, and just feels like he's really confident, and he's a little bit more Juggernaut-like, a little bit more harder to kill type of thing. And that's the qualities I like about the film. The 3D stuff, when you're watching it 2D, it's just a lot of visual gimmickry gags type of thing that get a little annoying after a while. But if you do like 3D, it's a real good example of 3D film done in the right way. Nice gimmicky type of stuff. You get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But moving on, Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Obviously Paramount kind of said, let's just put the nail in this thing, let's be done with it, we don't want to do it anymore. But obviously afterwards they made so much money they decided to carry things on. But final chapter, and I do have one holdback about the film, which I'll get to, but it is one of the best slasher films ever made. It is so good. Joe Zito directs this film so damn well. It's got great cast, great characters. They're all fun. You got Crispin Glover in there, a little pre-Back to the Future action from him, playing a real good character, real fun stuff. Well, just a lot of fun cast. And Corey Feldman does an exceptional job in this film as Tommy Jarvis, at the beginning of the Tommy Jarvis trilogy in this franchise, which is a great piece of story arc in this whole thing. It's very interesting too, but he starts out as this little kid who ends up fighting Jason. He has this confrontation, this eerie confrontation with Jason in the climax, and there's a lot of good stuff. Tom Savini also comes back and does the effects for this one, because I created Jason in the first place, I'm going to end him. History teach otherwise, but it's a really good film. It's really damn good. My only holdback about the final chapter is the character of Trish Jarvis, who is fucking dumb as shit. Because there's this one scene in the film where Rob, the kind of guy who's out in the woods hunting Jason, all that kind of stuff. They go down to a basement where Jason is. Jason bludgeons him to death with a hammer. She runs away. Then she turns back around and runs back down into the basement. It's the most stupid thing I've ever seen in a horror movie, any kind of horror movie whatsoever. It's the stupidest fucking thing, and she comes off as a complete dumb ass. And it's gotten to the point where once that scene happens in the film, I am just so taken out of the film that I just can't push myself forward to watch this character over and over and over again through the whole third act. It's a stupid character. And once you get into the third act, it's a very stupid character that really drags me out of it and annoys the fuck out of me. If it wasn't for just that one scene, take everything else out, leave everything else in, take that one scene out, I could get through it and be an exceptional, amazing film. A lot of people say this is one of the best films of the whole franchise. Followed by Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, which, again, final chapter made a whole bunch of money. We're going to keep going and make more money, and even though Paramount kind of said, always felt this was the black sheep of their studio, they didn't really want to, they were kind of ashamed of it, but it made so much boatloads of profit for them. How could you not keep shaking that money tree? But Friday the 13th Part 5 feels like a direct-to-video quality film, and that's hard to say now, because in the past year I've seen Savage Streets, because director Danny Steinman directed Part 5 here, A New Beginning, and Savage Streets. And Savage Streets, I absolutely love that film. It's such a great, gritty exploitation type of film that if you watch that, you could get the idea of this guy could definitely make a really good Friday the 13th film given a chance. And he didn't, and I don't know why he didn't. I don't know what it was that didn't allow him to make a good film. I don't know if they're partially because they're trying to sidestep bringing Jason back from the grave like Part 6 would do. They killed off Jason in number 4, so they trying to work this sort of Tommy Jarvis story where it doesn't really kind of work. John Shepherd does as good of a job as he can with what the script gives him. But the thing is that Tommy Jarvis is supposed to be the protagonist of the film, but he's such an introverted character that he's not active in the plot. He just kind of stands there and stares out in the distance and doesn't really do anything, or he has these great flashes of horrific images of Jason and everything, which are great moments. He plays them very well, but Tommy is not an active part of the plot, and he's surrounded by a lot of characters who are just not quite as interesting, and especially like Friday the 13th final chapter had, or part 2 had. It just feels a little cheesy here and there. It doesn't seem like it's as good as it could have been, and it seems like they had some ideas that could have worked in a certain way, but they just couldn't execute it in the best way possible. But the uproar over this film not having the real Jason in the whole film, that it had some imposter Jason running amok through the whole film, killing people, resulted in Paramount Studios deciding we're going to bring back Jason one way or another, and they hired writer-director Tom McLaughlin to do Jason Lives Friday the 13th Part 6, which is one of my absolute favorites of the whole franchise. I love this film. I love it so much because it got to the point in the franchise where it can poke fun at itself a little bit. It can be a little self-aware, but still be a good, solid piece of work. And Tom McLaughlin really shows that he has a lot of love for like classic horror monsters, like Frankenstein, like Jason being reanimated from the bolt of lightning and all that kind of stuff. It's got that great kind of sort of satire to it, a little comedy, a little humor, but it still has a lot of thrills. It's a really good story. I like Tom Matthews as Tommy Jarvis. He's my favorite actor in that role. I think he does a great job making Tommy that action-centric character while still having a little bit of a haunted quality to him here and there. He takes that parts that John Shepherd had a little bit and just makes him a more active action character, a character that's going to go out and do something about what's happening to him. And I think the movie is great. I think C.J. Graham does a really good Jason. He does a really good job. And this film introduced me to Alice Cooper, really. And his songs in this film made me go out and buy the box set and get those extra songs and buy the Constrictor album, a whole bunch of stuff. I love this film so much. I think it's a great piece of work. I got a great sense of fun, entertainment value. It's just got a good sense of action and thrilling stuff, and it's got a great lead. You got good stuff. You got good characters all over the place, and there's no one that feels like a stupid character anywhere. Everyone's very smartly written, smartly acted. I think it's a great cast, great characters, and got a great climax where Tommy and Jason are on the lake. You got the fire going. It's a great visual film. It's got great quality to it. I love the blue tones. I just love everything about this film whatsoever. And it's unfortunate that this is the end of the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, because Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, feels like a bit of a letdown to me. That the film could have been, at this time I think Paramount and New Line were throwing around the idea of the Freddy vs. Jason film, and things didn't work out, and they just wanted to have something like Jason meets his match. That he faces someone who's a little more powerful, someone who can take a little bit more to him and everything. And so they came up with this whole idea of a psychic, which, I mean, you can't fault them for going a little more paranormal, supernatural after they resurrected Jason from the grave. But the film doesn't really do it for me. I know a lot of people, this is like their favorite of the franchise, but just, again, it comes down to the characters. If the characters aren't very entertaining, they're not really charismatic and interesting, the film doesn't work for me. The Friday the 13th film really kind of hangs on the characters. You can have great gore effects, great kills, great imagination about that stuff, but if the characters aren't there, I don't really care that much. I don't think the character of Tina is very interesting. Again, it's back to that kind of John Shepherd, Tommy Jarvis thing, where it's a very introverted character dealing with a lot of internal conflicts and everything that are not very outwardly charismatic and lively and interesting type of person. They're much more repressed type of person. Doesn't make for a very exciting protagonist in the film. And there's a lot of good effects in the film. I would say John Carl Buechler does a fantastic job with the makeup effects. Are the best effects of the whole franchise. Jason looks amazing. Kane Hodder, Dave Buell performance done an amazing job in that. There's a lot of things going for it in that quality. That the great effects. Kane Hodder. Buechler does a fairly good job of directing the film, but also I think it's a very uneven film. And I know a lot of people with Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, they don't like it very much. I can understand why. the thing is cut to shit. There's like no gore whatsoever in this film at all. But again, comes down to the characters, and I love the characters in this film, even though they might be cheesy, a little silly. I really, really like this cast of characters. They do a lot for me. I love Julius, who's just kind of like this big testosterone badass guy, just like the boxer guy, and he's just great stuff. I like the Charles McCullough character. He's just kind of this sleazy, Weasley piece of crap that you can love to hate. And I do like Jensen Daggett as the lead in this film. I think she does a really good job. I think she's a really engaging lead for the franchise. And a couple other characters here and there. I like JJ, who gets killed with the guitar. I just love her in the film. I wish she lasted longer because she's very fun to witness in the film and all that kind of stuff. I love Fred Mullen's score. I love the darker tone of it. I love the darker tone of the score. A little heavier, a little more percussive, just a little more. Even though they had to cut back on the gore and the visuals because the MPA was slicing up horror films like lunch meat at the time. Today, this film probably would get a PG-13, aside from a little bit of nudity that has in it and maybe drug use. But on a gore factor, it's very, 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 very tame. But I like the film because it's another one of those films I kind of like for the potential, the idea that they had to have Jason running amok in New York City, which director Rob Hedden really had a lot more ambitious ideas for, like being on the Statue of Liberty or the Empire State Building or Madison Square Garden, just going to all these different locations and utilizing New York to its fullest. Unfortunately, the budget wasn't there to be able to do that sort of thing, so he had to rearrange things and spend more time on the boat and less time in New York. But the shot of Jason in Times Square is just priceless. I really think so. And Kane Hodder still does a great job. He does a good, solid job keeping the character nice and intimidating and menacing. The end with the toxic waste, yeah, that's kind of shit. But it's the film that I can just throw on at any time. I can just put it on and enjoy it. If I just want to watch a slasher film, just sit back and enjoy it, and not whatever it is, just have a fun time. That's the film I put on. I probably put that on more than any other film in the franchise. Just want to relax and watch something nice and fun and entertaining. I can throw that on and just have a good time. And at this time, Paramount said, we're done with this thing. It's not making much at the box office anymore. We're done. Bye-bye, Jason. New Line Cinema comes in, picks him up. We get Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, in quotation marks. Of course, you just pick up the franchise for this thing. You're not going to say, yeah, we're doing one film and done. No. But I know a lot of people, again, don't like Jason Goes to Hell because it's such a radical departure from what the rest of the franchise is. This is one of my favorites of the franchise. First off, Stephen Williams as Creighton Duke. Excellent character, probably the best character in the whole fucking franchise. He steals every scene, he makes the whole fucking film amazing. Stephen Williams, everything I see him in, from Jump Street to X-Files, everything in between. The guy's an excellent actor whatsoever. And again, a lot of great cast, a lot of high quality actors in this whole thing. I love Stephen Culp and John D. LeMay, who appeared in the Friday the 13th television series, which really didn't have anything to do with the film franchise, but they kind of rode the name recognition a little bit. But he does a really good job. I like him in the film a lot. I like that he's much more of an average, kind of dorky kind of guy. He's not your typical action type of guy. He's not even really the central protagonist in the film, and that falls upon his sort of ex-girlfriend, whatnot, and she's a descendant of the Voorhees family, and there's a lot of stuff about a lot more supernatural, mystical type of stuff going on. Just because, if you're going to say Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, you got to have something that's big and impressive, and you got to be more than just you're hacking him up. You're going to send him straight to fucking hell in the most fantastical way you can. And I really like this film. Like that, I know a lot of people don't like the film because Jason himself is not in it very much. But it's like, Friday the 13th Part 2, he's not in it that much. You don't actually see Jason on screen all that much. It's stuff like that. Even the first film, you don't see the killer until the very end of the film. So it's you can argue it's a bit of a hollow argument, but at this point, yeah, people are expecting more and more Jason in the film. And he's body hopping and all this weird, magical, mystical, undead, cult kind of crap, which can turn a lot of people off. But I love the film. I really like it, especially the unrated cut, which is not on the damn Blu-ray. They're not including the unrated cut on Blu-ray, so be aware of that. The theatrical R-rated version is the only version they're putting out on the high-def Blu-ray. You can only get it on the damn DVD or the VHS. But that unrated cut is so fucking gory. And New Line was the first studio to put out a unrated Friday the 13th film on home video in the US, so kudos to them. Unfortunately, now I have to retract that because they're not putting it on the damn Blu-ray for ever stupid reasons. But Final Friday, I really, really like it. It's one of my favorites. I love the whole idea, the whole thing. I can see why people don't like it very much, but I'm not going to argue that. And several years later, there comes Jason X. Jason in space, in the future. I never really liked this film. I never really liked it at all. I barely watched it. I watched it in the theater. I probably watched it when I got it on DVD. I got it on DVD because I liked the featurettes that I had on it. And that's the only reason I owned the DVD. Like I said, I haven't seen it so much. I haven't seen it in so damn long, but I just don't like. It gets a little too silly. It gets a little too outrageous. It gets a little too out there. Just like it's the stupidest idea you could really come up with. Because yeah, Hellraiser in space and Leprechaun in space, that shit worked real fucking well with the fans and everyone else. Yeah, that went over really well. Let's throw Jason in space too. No, I'm sorry. I know there are people, again, who like this film, and I don't. I really don't fucking like it at all. I don't. Kane Hodder comes back again, and it's probably his weakest performance of all of them, I really think. It just, he felt a little too much on autopilot. And a lot of the design of him I didn't like, that they kind of created all this weird shit about him being regenerative, that he doesn't look like the Jason we know. He looks a lot more human now. And I just didn't like the film at all. I just didn't like the concept. I didn't like the whole thing. It just seemed a lot more cheesy, a lot more stupid. I know that's weird to say for a Friday the 13th film, but a lot of the other films just tried to stay to the core idea of it as possible. It might change it up a little bit here and there, but at least they kept it grounded in the present day, more or less, and kept Jason in his environment. Now they throw him in his completely science fiction environment, which was sci-fi was not his thing. Fantasy a little bit, wouldn't say sci-fi. I don't think he needs to be on a spaceship killing people and turn into a fucking cyborg. I just don't think it needed to happen. Other people like the film, I don't. Freddy vs. Jason. That's the interesting one. I was hyped to living shit for this film. I saw it 3 times on opening weekend. I helped a friend who was in a band to create this promotional party that weekend with his band and a whole band lineup and everything. I loved the film when it came out. I was so excited. I just couldn't sleep that night. I went and saw it twice in the same day. I loved it, but then years pass and you look back on it, it's like, this is not a very good film. This is a letdown of a fucking film. That in 10 years, looking through all these scripts and commissioning all these screenwriters and everything, this cannot be the best fucking script that they could possibly come up with. And Ronnie Yu is no way possible the best director they could have gotten for this thing. There's no semblance of horror in this film. There's no scary qualities. There's no suspense. There's no tension. It's just a big monster movie. It's a monster movie. That's all it is. It doesn't fall into horror and scary and all that kind of stuff. And even then, way too much CGI. Even for Freddy, too much fucking CGI. I didn't like it that there's just... And the gallons and gallons and gallons of blood. It's just... You're making this into a big comic book adventure. When I want I want to bring these characters back to their scary roots, so to get them back in that gritty, dark, evil quality and whatnot. That dark kind of quality that made us fall in love with them in the first place. Get them back to the roots instead of taking on this much more big, over-the-top bullshit and everything. And the acting in this film, for the vast most part, is fucking bad. This is some of the worst acting in either franchise combined. So many stiff actors. There's a couple bright spots. There's a couple like Brendan Fletcher and Zach Ward do excellent work. Unfortunately, anyone that's actually a good actor is only there to deliver exposition about the film, and once they've delivered that exposition, they're killed off. We don't need them anymore. We don't need that better actor. Let's get rid of them and focus on these stiff, wooden, hollow acting qualities. It didn't do it for me. And then, you know, once you get Freddy and Jason hitting each other, taking on each other, first in the dream world, it's back to comical Freddy. Or doing jokey Freddy. You know, the film starts out showing Freddy as this child killer and possibly something even more insidious than that. And we're going to make him crack jokes and all that kind of stuff all over again. And the pinball shit of in the dream world throwing Jason around, and the stupid shit about Jason being afraid of fucking water when he probably walked miles and miles and miles under the ocean getting to the docks in Manhattan, New York just a couple films ago. And it's all Jason's been in the water time and time and time again without a fucking flinch. It doesn't make any sense. It's stupid shit. It's bad writing. I didn't like when they finally get in the real world. When you finally get Jason and Freddy in the real world fighting, they're doing all this comical shit. They're doing all this kind of wrestling moves, dropping elbows, all this kind of stuff. I liked when they just trash all the gimmicky shit and just start tearing into each other, ripping chunks of flesh out of each other. Unfortunately, that's short-lived, and the ending's kind of quirky. It's kind of right. I can forgive that entirely. I kind of like it. That there's enough of a Jason satisfaction there, but you also get that Freddy sort of quirky manipulation type of thing where he's kind of outsmarted everyone and he's gotten what he wanted regardless of what happened. And you'd think that after this film, which was the biggest success in either franchise, that they'd jump on top of doing some kind of follow-up within this continuity. And it fizzled out. They didn't get to do a Freddy vs. Jason sequel, and they waited out and waited out and waited out and waited out until the point where they said, well, let's just do a remake. Friday the 13th, 2009. I don't like it either. The only reason why I own the DVD is because I was trying to do research for my Friday the 13th fan film script, just kind of get a feel for the different Jasons, because Derek Mears, I'll give it this much, Derek Mears, excellent Jason Voorhees. Definitely one of the best, and he is fantastic in the role. I love that more animalistic quality that he gives it, and he's just really damn good. I really like what he does in the role, but the film is filled with all these obnoxious, bad stereotype characters. They're fucking irritating. The film is directed again by Marcus Nispel, who did the Texas Chainsaw remake, and it looks like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. And it doesn't work. It doesn't feel like a Friday the 13th film at all. It really doesn't. It's another one of those Platinum Dunes films that just doesn't have any life. It doesn't really get the charm. Because regardless of however good the characters were in any of the real Friday the 13th films, they at least had that charm, that genuine quality, that kind of heart. They felt like real, genuine actors, at least trying to give some kind of decent quality to them. This film it's fucking obnoxious. They're obnoxious characters. The gore might be good, but it's not a very effective film. I don't think it's well made. I don't think they did a very good job capturing the spirit of what Friday the 13th is. And that's all I really got to say. It's not a film I've watched many times. I didn't like it when I saw it in the theater, and you can take it or leave it. And I know they're planning to do a sequel. I don't know how good it'll be, because they're hiring the same damn writers who did Freddy vs. Jason and did the remake, and another film I really like anymore. And we'll see where things go from there. But Friday the 13th, aside from those last couple films, still my favorite slasher franchise. I can watch those first 9 films. I have a great time doing it. Even the ones I don't like too much, Part 5 or Part 3, I can still watch them, enjoy them to a certain degree. They're a lot better than a lot of other lower grade slasher films, or even I could watch any of those first 9 Friday films over a lot of the bad stuff in like the Elm Street or Halloween franchises any day of the week. And you can go check out some written reviews below if you want to get a little more insight on any one of the films in general. And that's really all I got for you. That's all I got. And I know it's a long video, longer than I intended it to be, but hope you enjoyed it. And I don't know what the next review will be, but hope I'll get back to you sooner than later. Take care.